Welcome back to
All
another
right.
of Monday Morning with Mike. Beat you to it, buddy. Yeah, we had about a 10-second meeting before the show, and we know we're going to kick it off. You started talking about something that it's been coming up for me in my own personal life right now. So I love it.
Oh, really? All
Yeah,
right. So
yeah.
peep this. Basically, I I mean, unless you're listening, then you can't peep it. You can only uh, lend us your ears. Basically, we can all think of someone who all their shit breaks, like their laptop breaks, their car breaks down, and the way they talk about these things is like, "Oh, it's a piece of shit and it always breaks." I think the way that you treat your stuff, not just physically, like taking your car in for an oil change, but I think the way that you think about it influences how well it works or how well it lasts. And the example I remember is from that Cialdini book Influence, I'm pretty sure, where they
Love
had
that book.
the robot, the mama duck robot, or it was baby chicks, I think. And so the baby chicks would follow this random robot around in a room. And the movement of the robot was random. Like you could trace out a pattern and it was consistent with a random path. And then they took the baby chicks away and put them on one side of the rectangle or square. I think it was a rectangle that this robot could drive around. And because there was this link between the baby chicks who thought this robot was their mother and the robot and those chicks, it wasn't really random anymore. It stayed proximal to the baby chicks in a significant way. And I think that I always thought that was super cool.
What do you mean it stayed proximal? The robot did?
Yeah. So instead of being exactly random, it was statistically significantly staying closer. It was still moving around and changing directions, but it stayed much closer. And the distribution was as if either the intent of the baby chicks to have it close, which is most likely,
Well, this is a quantum
um,
physics conversation. Is that what
it,
you're saying?
I suppose so. Yeah, the desire of the baby chicks to be with their robot mother influenced the randomness of the computer.
Even though it's mechanical. So, yeah, there's research on this, and the just the witnessing of something impacts it. Uh, and I won't pretend I'm an expert in quantum physics, but that's generally the idea: is just our perception of what's happening is making an impact.
I think
And
we would all enjoy you pretending to be an expert in quantum physics.
all
I
right, here
think
we
that would
go.
make for
Here we go.
great
Look,
radio.
I I, I watched The Secret. I saw that. I watched What the Bleep Do We Know, and I read two Joe Dispenza books. So I am now an expert on quantum physics. Uh,
Mm.
Actually, I had a friend. I think it's even a suggested prompt for AI for the Chat GPT. Now that we're back on that subject again, but can you
Didn't take long.
explain quantum physics in plain language? And it'll spit out. So, if anyone wants a more clear thing, you just ask the fucking robot. It'll tell us. But yeah, how I notice this with people because I think you and I are alike in that I've been to your house. You like your tools, you like your toys, and you usually have quality toys and tools. And I do too. And so I like what they say is buy once, cry once.
Yeah.
So you got, I notice people that are always having car trouble are usually, you know, they're gonna buy the lower end vehicle, or they're not gonna get as nice of a computer or whatever. I think that's part of it. I also one thing I've witnessed with hanging out with people who didn't have the same upbringing I had. Like I grew up, with my dad teaching me to like if you use a paintbrush, you clean it thoroughly right when you're done, and it'll last
Mhm.
you for years. And most, I watch people that they just use a paintbrush and then throw it away, and I'm like,
Right.
oh, this is like that's a really fine paintbrush. Yeah, it was $15, but it's not disposable. And I what I find is people they don't take care of their stuff and they don't know how. Like they just don't they never read the directions. So I was so that applies to like kitchen tools. I've been places where or people have like used my knives and I'm like having to clean up behind them because I'm like, yeah, don't leave a dirty knife that's gonna dull the blade. And they're like, huh? So I think that
Mm.
there's just a lot of little things like that. I mean, I've also ran into it's funny
It
when I
doesn't even
left
have to be high end either. Even if
no.
you have something that is like, let's say, medium, you can have a very inexpensive car that'll last you a long time. Like you can, I mean, I don't know what they cost now, but the baseline Hyundai used to be like 7 grand 10 years ago. Some for brand new. You know,
Yeah.
nothing, no power or anything, manual transmission, but you could drive that thing 200,000 miles if you
Yeah, I
took
mean,
good care of it.
all you gotta do is take it in for an oil change every
It's amazing.
5,000.
Yeah.
And I think the new cars, I think they told me my truck only needs like an oil change every 8,000 or 10,000 or something like that.
Definitely
So,
depends on the type of oil that you put in there.
type of oil and where you're driving it.
Mm.
Lots of off-roading out in the desert definitely will you should probably change that a little more frequently.
Mm.
So I'm on a
Yes, there's an
go ahead.
energetic thing, right?
There's
There's
an
an energetic thing with how you um, relate to the extensions of yourself, like your stuff,
yeah, I
right?
mean that there's what's happening from like a quantum physics perspective, and then that energy influences the mind, and the mind interprets that data and then creates behaviors. And it's like 1 degree difference makes
Mhm.
a huge difference in say 5 years down the road. Like 5 years down the road. Okay.
Yeah. And it's hard to say what the effect will be. Like the idea that if a car is dented, it's, I'm going to make up a statistic on the spot, like 3 times more likely to be dented again.
Mm-hmm.
If there's, some sort of uh, deformity or whatever to whatever the item is, it's much more likely to get beat up even a little bit more rather than
Oh,
to stay
I
pristine, right?
yeah, yeah. Everyone pay attention to this. I would love to get people's feedback on this once they start paying attention. When I'm driving around and I see a car that's got half of its bumper smashed off or it's got a big dent in it and you see a bunch of duct tape on it,
They give them a
then
wide berth.
yeah, it's like I am paying extra attention to you and I am going to
Right.
get as far away and I'm watching and 9 times out of 10 I see them do something dumb. I see them do
Yeah.
something dumb. They change lanes into another car, whatever it is. It's oh, okay. This is this all makes sense.
It makes sense. Totally agree.
So I'm on a media fast this week.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. It's been
Uh,
like no
Tell me
books.
the parameters.
Okay, uh,
So, what
so
are you allowed to consume? Only face to face with other people?
I'm doing music without lyrics. So the idea is I'm minimizing the external influence over the mind. So the
Oh,
only
man.
I'm only
Cool.
going to get the thoughts from people in person. I'm not. I will check my
Sweet.
text messages. I am checking my email. If a news, I subscribe to some blogs. If a blog pops up, I just skip it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, no YouTube, no whatever. And yeah, so I'm doing a media fast plus a lot of journaling.
Mm,
And man, what was it? I'm day 4. Started on Sunday, maybe day 5. Yeah, day 5 now. Wow. It's I've done media fast, but not intentionally. I might go to a retreat where
right.
for up to 10 days where we're just minimizing all of our interaction with electronics and everything. But to be at home and working and doing my day to day and not consuming any media it's been really cool. It's been really great. And one thing I've noticed is every once in a while something will get through. I walk by, I hear someone else listening to a podcast, or I walk through a store and whatever. Something pops up, and I'm much more acutely aware of the impact it has on my thoughts. I watch the mind just trail off and start judging that, the topic, or like, oh, this person's talking about that, and I start formulating all my opinions around that thing. And it's been really, really fascinating. So I'm doing 1 week media fast, and then I'm going to, just like I would a fast with food, is I'll start introducing the healthiest stuff back in first. So really loving the experiment. And and yeah, I would say I'm generally happier this week because of that.
Not surprised. Are you reading? You're not reading anything?
No
It's all
books.
just face to face communication.
Yeah. So, well, I'm reading texts, I'm reading emails. Like I'm
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
I'm doing
That's
like the necessary communications with friends,
right,
family,
right.
and clients.
Mm-hmm. The audiobook for when you break your fast of the Tao Te Ching is one of my favorites of all time. Something that I've listened to many, many times, in excess of 50.
Whoa.
And the wisdom is quite timeless. So that's my recommendation. I
What's it
like to
called?
exercise. The Tao Te Ching, the Tao
Oh,
Te Ching. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I've read it
And
a few times.
there's an audiobook version. I'll send you the link at the end, because there's a bunch of them, and some of them have nature sounds, and some of them are different translations, and they kind of suck, honestly. Like, I've
Mhm.
explored a bunch of different versions, and there's one version that's very beautifully written.
Mhm.
And man, that is my go-to. I go out in the yard, I practice some martial arts forms, I spin a stick or a rope, or um, you know, swing some rings around, whatever. And man, talk about a really constructive download into your psyche.
Just listen. I've always read it. I've never listened to it. I like that. One thing I was doing I did it for 2 weeks leading up to leading up to this fast, and my buddy sent me this really great. I'll throw a link in the email that I send out. Of course, if you want to get my emails, go to my Instagram account, click the button, opt in, and it's all affirmations around building wealth and increasing income and all that kind of stuff. Most affirmation tracks I come across, I do not like. This one in particular is exceptional, and I was listening to that, and I go to yoga. It's a 20-minute drive there, 20-minute drive back. What I was doing is I was listening to The Untethered Soul. Have you read or listened to that book yet?
I sure have. It's
Yeah,
good.
love it. So I think it's my third or fourth time going through it, and I'm listening to that on the way to yoga. I do the yoga, and then I'm super clean, mind is clear. Hop in the car, throw on the money affirmations, and then I got to where I'm like, yeah, I'll just start repeating after it. So I'm repeating after it,
Mm.
and and yeah, that night I wake up in the middle of the night, and I realized that I needed to share something with my partner, and like it kept me awake for about 2 hours. And then the next day, our schedules didn't align to where I could have a conversation with her till that afternoon. And it was, uh, and then the next day after that, as soon as I woke up, I realized that I needed to do something in my business and that I had been avoiding. And it was really interesting because I think that a lot of times people think about affirmations and they go, yeah, if I just like, Joe Dispenza that shit, and, if I think it and believe it, then I can achieve it type of thing. Like that, I think there's like this magical thinking around some of that, which I like we were saying at the beginning of the show, having positive thoughts about something is likely going to, have that quantum physics impact. But I think for me, what I notice is, uh, I think what other people could work on as well is if you're pushing and pulling in a ton of information to try to program your mind, right? Because that's all it is I'm just repeating and getting the same message over and over and over again. It's all repetition, and repetition is the mother of all learning. And the what ends up happening is it brings up anything that's keeping me from having more like revenue come in, or having more wealth being built, or whatever. And
Hmm.
it could be really easy to dismiss, like, oh, I don't, that was just like a little thing, I don't need to worry about that. But these energetic blocks that come up could result in really big outcomes. And so one thing I noticed is a lot of things that was avoiding out of fear, I was confronted with, and I knew by the second thing that came up, by the second day of listening to affirmations, like, oh, this is the work right here. Listen to the affirmations, pay attention to what comes up. I
Mm-hmm.
digest a lot in my sleep. I think we all do. Wake up the next morning. Okay,
Mm.
I know exactly what needs to be done, or I know exactly what to stop, or whatever. So, yeah, it's been really powerful, and I like to bring that up just because I think a lot of times people think about that as magic, and there's magical shit about it, but also um, the bypassing that I witness a lot of people doing is they'll do the affirmations, but when the stuff starts coming up, then they just want to do more affirmations and hope that that other stuff just gets swept under the rug, and then they wonder why it doesn't work.
I see what you're talking about. It's like you're using the messages that you're taking in to trigger where the work needs to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. You ever notice that for yourself?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I notice, well, it's funny. Speaking of taking in messages or not, I always find it weird when I see a commercial because I don't really see commercials, actually. I have ad blocker on my computer. So I don't see ads for stuff. So if I'm out and about and I happen to see an advertisement, I'm like, whoa, that's that's weird.
Uh,
And every advertisement has to make you feel like you're lacking something.
yeah.
So everything is designed to make you feel like you're missing out on some deal. So they're just like, here, have some lack rather than abundance. Here's some more lack for
Right.
you. Um, and when you significantly reduce those inputs, you realize that not much is lacking actually at all. And the more you are present, which is kind of the theme of Untethered Soul, Be Here Now, a lot of these, I think, excellent books. I like Be Here Now, Untethered Soul. Um, the Power of Now is also quite good. Tao Te Ching, definitely number one favorite book I've ever read. You are you're downloading new information, and then when you repeat it and apply it, it's like you're installing it. When you download something
Mm.
off the internet, if you download a program, that's just the first step. But once you start repeating it and ingraining it into your psyche, that's where you install it. And that's a big difference. A lot of people want to just download, but they don't want to do the installation.
I witnessed this early in my when I started really taking business seriously. It was
Hmm.
2013, and I go to my first good business conference, my first marketing conference. And I walk before I left the conference, I had made shifts in the business that started generating more revenue and uh, was made the business way more fun. And I got home. So I started before the conference was even over. I get home and I just start, I get with my business partners and we just start doing all the things that we learn. And then I met a lot of people at this conference. 6 months later, I go to another conference and I see this guy that I had met at the first conference. And we were kind of in similar positions at the first conference. We get to the second conference and I had taken the I went from like having no clients online in 6 months. I think we had maybe 300 clients online, and uh, the I see the guy. I'm like, oh yeah, man. What have you got? What did you do in the last 6 months since that conference where we met at? Uh,
Hmm.
or well, before I asked him that, he was telling me about all the stuff he had learned. He had learned all this stuff. He was like, "Oh, I love this speaker." I'm like, I find out that he's been coming to these conferences for a long time, and these are his favorites. And then I ask him how he's doing, and he's like, he wasn't taking any action at all. He
Yeah,
just
he's addicted to
loved,
school.
he just loved learning. And I was like, "Oh wow, there's a difference. Don't be that guy." But I think that
Hmm.
that happens. I mean, we have a podcast, but I think a lot of people do that with podcasts. They just, you know, uh, like Joe Rogan just interviewed Jordan Peterson. I listened to like 10 minutes of it. And then the next day I found out that I'm doing a media fast. And I was like, oh, I want to hear what Jordan Peterson has to say. The problem is
Hmm.
Jordan Peterson, he says things that like really, he says things in a different way that is really satisfying to hear. But I rarely come away with anything that makes a giant impact on my life. Um, and that's because when I listen to him, like I've already gotten that message, uh, but the enjoyment of just listening to it is more of just it's kind of like that confirmation bias. It's like, oh, I agree with mostly what he says, and I
And it
just
makes
like,
you feel smart. It
yeah,
makes
just
you
like
feel smart. I agree. He's right. I agree.
exactly,
And he's a performer, and necessarily so. I think he would agree. I know he has a lot of religious subtext and text to his lectures. And if you are hot or cold, I'll listen. But if you're lukewarm, I'll spit you out. I'm paraphrasing, right?
right.
The reality is every show we do every week should be like, hey everybody, let's remember to love each other, and let's remember to love ourselves, and focus on something that is important to you, and we'll see you next week. That's it. uh, but saying something true and concise, people are like, well, yeah, that can't be it though, right? That there's got to be
Right.
more to it than that. And it's like, not really, because the way that you grow is through desire or discomfort. And as we know, desire is a type of pain, right? So if you want something and you are interested in it, then you'll do everything is necessary. to figure that out. And the specifics are just the icing on the cake. It really isn't going to matter too much. Like, you'll figure it out. But if you present information that way, people aren't going to be, they won't believe it. I mean, even there's even a passage in the Tao Te Ching that talks about, when the master learns of the Tao, he immediately begins to apply it. When the average man learns of the Tao, he half believes it and half doubts it. And when the inferior man learns of the Tao, he laughs at it. He makes fun of it. And if he didn't make fun of it, it wouldn't be the real Tao, basically.
Right.
So the words seem stupid and simple, and they are. But unless Jordan Peterson puts it in a story of good and evil and heaven and hell, and says things with conviction and imagery and murder and sex and death and all these things, no one's going to give a fuck. So that's the performance aspect that makes it fun to listen to, because that's what podcasting is by and large. It's not, here's the most pertinent information. It's, I'm going to entertain you. And along the way, as you enjoy the sound of my voice, like you're with another person, you might pick up a few nuggets, and the rare person will write them down, and the even more rare person would apply them to their life in some way.
Yeah, this reminds me of a concept that I've played around with, which is people believe that their problems are complex because they haven't figured it out yet. And because they have complex problems, they think they need complicated solutions. And when presented with a really simple solution, they go, well, I haven't been able to figure it out so far. So why would it be that simple? And most simple, effective solutions are totally disregarded.
And it might be wrong for that individual too. One of the passages in the Tao, again, I'll just try to answer every topic and
Perfect.
question with a passage from the Tao. I'm going to just bring my copy out and leaf through it. But one of the phrases is, stop thinking and end your problems.
I think Ram Dass has one of his quotes is karma is the mind.
Mm,
Similar vein. The,
I need to unpack that. I'll get back to you. In the
sorry, I'll
meantime,
try to
everybody,
keep my Ram Dass quotes to a minimum.
remember to love one another and focus on what's important to you. That's it.
Well, what's important to you these days?
mm, I have the protector mentality for my family, uh, my special lady friend and the dogs and the household and the gym in town, and I have my little fitness family there. But as far as the extra desires, I I play games and try to pretend that I want that stuff. Like, I keep going back to trying to want a boat, because that would really get me off my ass. Because a boat, especially if you get a nice boat, is a really significant investment that is ongoing. And the truth is, I don't really want a boat, but I want a boat so that I will spring forth and light a fire under my butt. But the reality is, the stuff that I enjoy most is very simple and straightforward. I like to spend time with friends. I like to play a little tennis. I like to climb a tree and take the dogs on a hike and eat tasty food and that sort of thing. So, um,
Sounds like like the external motivation is an excuse to do what you really want to do. Which sounds like you want to be in some type of action. You
mm,
want to be more motivated.
well, Yeah, I suppose I do.
I think a lot of people have probably driven by
But
that.
there's no real need for it, I guess is the thing.
Right.
So it's very tricky.
Yeah. No, I totally get it. I've definitely been very comfortable in different points of my life, and I go, yeah, yeah, we made $1 million. Should we make three next year? Like, it's like, oh yeah,
Right,
we could get this
exactly.
bigger house that's going to require more maintenance and but isn't actually going to make me any happier at all, except for those moments where I invite a bunch of people over and get to look important, you know.
And it's different for everybody. I don't say what someone should want or not want. I just happen to have gotten just about everything I want relatively early. That's all. And it's not because I'm crazy well off. It's just because what I want is not that crazy.
Yeah,
It's nothing super extravagant, and that's why I try to trick myself into being like, I want one of those like $1 million like 60 or 70 foot catamarans, with a big deck and and then like I look at them for a little bit and I'm like, I guess I could like
Wait,
charter one once and see
can
if
you
I
fill
even
the
like it.
audience in a little bit? Like, I want you to share what you want to share. We don't have to share like numbers or anything, but like my my impression of you is, yeah, you've done well enough, and you maintain a modest lifestyle. I don't think you're overly frugal, but yeah, you know, nice home. Everything in that home is what you need, what you want, and you live in a beautiful place and got a great car, and I don't know what else you really do, and the freedom to go hiking and take off for a week or two if you want. And it's just I think a lot of people who um it sounds like you know exactly what your enough number is, and you're very comfortable with this lifestyle. And I think most people have no idea what their enough number is. Um and so they don't even know what to work towards. They just know they don't have enough right now.
I My best guess is that I always felt, I don't know if resentful or like chip on my shoulder from having my time monopolized from a young age. Like school was very traumatizing for me because it was a you must do this, and for me it was a I hate this. So I must do something I hate that takes all my time from doing things that I like to do. And so to me, the only reason to build wealth in the first place is to free up your time so you can do what you want to do. And like I said, it's not wrong to have, if your hobby is uh, collecting helicopters, that just means you're going to need to invest a lot more resources into that thing that you like to do. But if you really just want your time free so that you can, do some martial arts, play some tennis, hang with friends, eat delicious food and not have to look at the menu, it's really not that crazy. And if you're willing to live a more Spartan lifestyle from the very beginning, it's even easier. So like for me that was very clear from even the time when I was like 14 years old, you know.
Yeah, I was totally clueless about that. I thought I was
Well,
going to be I never thought by the time I was 16, I didn't think I was going to make it past 30. So I just figured I'd live large until then.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
so mine was like the exact opposite of that.
yeah. Yeah.
Huh. I just didn't, when I was a kid, we got like evicted a few times and foreclosed and that sort of thing. And that's a very powerless feeling when you're a child. And so I knew I didn't want to be at the mercy of something like that. And I figured out pretty quickly, like almost every problem I saw within my family was related to finances, at least on the surface level. And once again, if you're not superficial and you're not trying to keep up with the Joneses, the amount that you need to live well and recapture your time is not too outrageous.
I just had a light bulb moment. The about my childhood as you were talking. The it totally makes sense that your childhood would produce this result, but my childhood was there was financial hardship, but it never got to the point of like foreclosure. It never got to the point. Like I remember my
Mm,
parents arguing about money or whatever, and there were times of like it was feast and famine at times,
hmm
and I hi mom, I know you're listening. Uh, there's feast and famine at times, and but the thing was is it always worked out,
mm,
and I didn't always get to do exactly what I wanted, and as I grew up, I formed some resentment around that, and I think most kids do. They don't get to do everything that they want to do. I've already worked through that, so but I see where I have a little more of a cavalier attitude entrepreneurially, or I've
mm,
had that in the past, and I've had to learn how to become much more systematic and methodical because I operate from the belief that yeah, at the end of the day, it's going to work out.
mm.
There's no real danger. It may get uncomfortable. Other people may experience some fear. But for me, like my tolerance for risk is just so high, and I think that's because we never really did. I never saw my family suffer great consequence from, not
Mm.
having enough money, and so it was just that. Thanks for that light bulb.
I think that, yeah, well, hey, anytime. Thanks for tuning in to group therapy with Max and Mike. Uh, the mentality that you bring is one that I believe has a higher ceiling, but it's a little bit less certain. The mentality that I bring to entrepreneurship has a lower ceiling, but has more certainty and methodical progression to it. It's kind of like when I was reading Richard Branson's book, and just reading it was making me stressed out. This guy is mortgaging his house. He's got his third mortgage on his house. He's mortgaging his business to buy a plane. His his co-owners in Virgin Music want to kill him because he's trying to kill their cash cow to buy planes. And then, a duck flies into the engine and he needs to ask the bank for another $50 million. And the whole thing just sounds insane to me. The phrase, why risk what you need for what you don't need? I'm like, dude, you already won. What are you doing? But once again, there's the survivorship bias. Probably a lot of other people have his same mentality. You just never hear about them because they did, in fact, lose everything. Um, it's like understanding how your personality matches with an entrepreneurial type, but then also being willing to ditch as much of that personality as possible.
Yeah, I
I
mean
that's how I see it.
that's been more of like as the longer I'm in entrepreneurship, the more conservative I become, and because
Well, you're also trying to have a family and kids, right? It's a little
that's
bit
true.
different than when you're like, I'm living with four other dudes and we're splitting the rent on a house and everybody's trying to get $1 billion. And that's probably one of the biggest factors. Just like if you want to get really jacked, you should exercise with a bunch of really jacked people. Like people are huge. If you want to get really good at martial arts, you should train with killers every day, right? So if you want to get really, really rich, you should hang out with people who are either A, already very rich, or B, throwing everything they can at that opportunity.
Yeah. The well, another thing that like there's so many things like so these are the things that contribute to the attitude that we bring to business and bring to life. I'm more risk tolerant, you're more risk averse and all that, but at the same time, one of the things I've recognized about you is when we've talked about this on the show before, which is you think about life as a game. So we think in metaphors. And I have in the past really tended to think about life as surfing. And, in a game, there's strategy, it's more methodical. And with surfing, there's definitely some strategy and all that, but you're really feeling things. You're really looking for the wave or looking for the trend, and then you're positioning yourself, and then you have to paddle really hard, and you step on it, and then you glide for a while, and then the ride is over, and you got to get back on your board, and you got to paddle, do all the work to paddle back out, and wait for the next thing.
Hmm.
And when I look at my life, I'm like, holy shit, I've been surfing the whole time. And I think about when you talk about life as a game, you know, and some people see it as a ride, go for the ride. Um,
Or a show.
or a show. Yeah, they become spectators, or maybe they're the star of the show. Who knows?
Right. Right.
And then, you're approaching it as a game, which has resulted in where you're at. And then because I've been looking at surfing, like it's like I'm waiting to watch something happening in the external world, and then I'm going to spot it, and I'm going to get ahead of it, and I'm going to catch it, which I've been pretty good at. And uh, I picked up a new game this week, and I'm not much of a gamer and never have been. I've definitely played games. I played Risk. I played Warcraft and all that kind of stuff. It's not like I know how to play chess. I played a little bit when I was a kid, but I didn't. It
We
wasn't like
should play chess or Go while we do the podcast next time.
yeah. Well, I picked up a new game which I think you'll really like called Onitama. Have you heard of it?
No.
No. Okay. Yeah, Japanese game. And it's kind of like chess, but it's got five. Uh, it's like a checkered board, and you got five, or not checkered. I guess it'd be checkered. It's squares, so 5 and 5, and uh, you're there's 16 different cards that you use only 5 of the 16, and those 16 tell you how all your pieces can move. And then during the game, the cards are rotating, or they're randomly rotating based on decisions you're making. There's no pattern to how you're going to receive the card necessarily.
Mm.
And so it's a very agile game. You can't plan that far ahead. Not like chess, where like chess is a game of discipline, whereas this is like a game
Mm.
that requires a lot of strategy. But it's a little more. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't know.
It sounds like the luck of the cards disrupts the strategy.
Exactly. And so you're having to think on your feet.
Mm.
So it's not it's different than chess in that way. It's more exciting. And so, and it's easy for people to learn, which is really cool.
Mm.
Now, the thing is we picked up the game on Saturday night. We were like, oh, what are we going to do? And I'm like, you know what? We don't have any games at the house. I think we have like a Cards Against Humanity or something like that in the closet. So I
Mm.
went to this game store where you got all these people set up at tables playing games, and they're serving food, and you can have a beer and play a game with somebody. I'll tell you what, the crowd was one of the most eclectic crowds I've ever been in. So
Mm.
a lot of weirdos. I think I was the weirdest one. Uh, and we sit down and we play. We try out different games and we find one we like, which is only time, and we take it home. And we fell in love with it and started playing it every single chance we got. And I had a buddy come and spend the night with me the other day. I taught him how to play. We played for a couple hours, and I got addicted to this game. But then every day when I wake up, I noticed that I am doing way more planning before I start my work. Like I'm
Mm,
seeing the value in preparation and paying attention to the details and what order am I going to do this in that's going to maximize my time. Um, I decided to kill a couple projects and then and that opened up some space for some new projects that are really cool. And I'm thinking way more strategically. And as I was journaling yesterday, I was like, oh, I'm thinking about life. I'm thinking about business as a game more. And I thought back to the
mm,
conversation you and I had a while back, which was you see it as a game, I see it as surfing, but I'm starting to adopt the game mentality. And I'm witnessing so much value in not just having to think ahead and plan and adjust, but a big part of it is just is the spatial strategy.
mm,
And without like I'm not thinking in words about what I'm doing. I'm really thinking in pictures as I'm playing.
mm.
And I don't think I have exercised that much in that way. Um, I think I did a lot when I was playing sports, but as I've gotten older, I've spent, if I played as many sports as I did when I was younger, I'd be hurt all the time. Uh, I've had to slow that down. So this has been a nice way to reintroduce that spatial strategy. Um, and yeah, I think it's been really good for my mind. And I've in less than a week, I feel more expansive.
Sounds like you were missing something, and this fit that hole.
Yeah, it's like if someone's been low in B vitamins their whole life, and then they eat their first ounce of raw liver, and then they're up for 2 days straight. It's like,
Mm,
oh, that's what that's what happens when you have enough, or there's a
yeah.
it's obvious when there's a gap because well, it's like someone who's never trained before, and you get them in the gym, and the first 12 weeks of training, they're gonna see crazy results, uh, and for their own personal view, as long as they're not comparing themselves to others, they're going to recognize those results. Someone's been training for 12 years. They come train, it's, just another day.
Well, and if you are comparing to others, you'll probably achieve more, no doubt. Just like if you have strong competition around you, you'll probably achieve more. I got asked recently the what has helped me grow the most in my life. And I wanted to distinguish what they meant. Did they mean professionally? Did they mean personally? And the truth is, it's back to desire. You just want to. If you really want something, you'll figure out the rest of it. And if you don't really want something, you'll make some excuse or ultimately just not do it. But one of the some of the things that helped me grow personally the most were things that I was severely lacking. So I got really strong physically. I got really good at fighting and Highland games and things like that. And I'm learning all this stuff. I'm taking all these seminars. And then I took some African dance classes. And that was right around the time I also started playing music. And these were things, rhythm and agility and musicality and creativity that I was deeply lacking as a whole person. And because they were at such significant deficits, it completely altered the course of my life because it was like I was getting the vitamins that I wasn't taking. And I remember thinking, I'm already about 3 times as strong as I would ever need to be for almost anything I encounter in my life. What am I doing trying to get stronger? I, I'm already it was silly, and that's why I have that like is your fitness just a fetish? Right? Like, do you want to
Yeah.
be as big as a house and lift 1,000 pounds or something like that? And it's like, okay, well, have you considered why you want that? Is it so you look cool in that specific niche crowd? In which case, more power to you. But I've seen people gain 100 pounds to fit in with the powerlifting crowd, and I go, what is this person doing? And it's because they want to be higher up in that tribe.
Yeah.
And I look at it as a, I have my personal opinions. I try not to throw them around too much because it's not up to me to decide what is important to someone. But I see that as a significant regression, while they would see it as a progression. But as far as actual athletics is concerned, it's definitely a regression. And it's kind of like being a surgeon or a brain surgeon versus being a general practitioner doctor or a holistic doctor that understands how all the systems work together. And when you specialize like that, you can definitely go much deeper and you can concentrate your skill and knowledge into one area, but you won't have that same well roundedness. And of course, the market does reward those concentrated bets, let's call it, quite a lot more than a generalist. But just like investing, if you put all your eggs in one basket, you can ultimately earn the most if you choose right, but you can also lose everything. And the more you diversify, the less likely you are to lose everything, but the less likely you are to, 1000x your money, or one of those crazy stories that you hear about. And it's the same thing with governance. If you give all the power to one guy and he's like totally cool, it's the best thing ever. But if you give all your power to one guy and he's like totally bad, everyone's fucked.
Yeah. Yeah. There's actually, I mean, this is exactly why I run my coaching program the way I do. The School for the Living program is we divided up life into four different categories. And anything that's happening in your life, anything you can come up with that exists in the universe will fit in one of these four categories. We have the internal self, psycho-emotional, the external self, which is the physical body. We have the internal collective, which is relationships, culture, all that. And we have the external collective, which is the environment and tools, anything outside of your physical body that's a physical thing. And each week we focus on one. And even if you're a pro at the physical, you'd still learn some new shit with the physical. But the the intention is to identify those deficits. And usually I like using the four quadrants and hitting each one of those in a month. And we do the way we're doing it right now is we rotate through it 3 times. So 4 weeks, four different quadrants, 3 rounds, and we get deeper with each round each time. And what I like is, someone who may have like a fitness background or a movement background or has done some qigong may like what's happening in the movement week or in the physical body week, and they learn something new. And plus, I do everything super simple, so a lot of times people have been practicing something that's really complex, and I just give them a simple version of it. And they go, "Oh, I could actually feel the energy that time." I'm like, okay, cool. But then, this is somebody who struggles with relationships, or they don't have any tools to manage their own psycho-emotional world. And so making an impact in one of these things is going to be their greatest benefit, right? But also what I like about having them in rotation is you get the chance to see how getting better at one of those quadrants actually impacts the other quadrants. It's like, oh, because I improved my relationships, my physical health is also improving. And I've been doing the same thing to improve my physical health, and I didn't even think to look in that direction. So the idea is we do it the way we do it so that we can systematically identify blind spots, highlight them, and know where to put our attention.
Sounds good. That's, I think, maybe the most helpful thing a coach can do is find those areas that have the greatest potential for overall improvement, like you said. Otherwise, what are you really doing?
Well, yeah, I mean, my job is to find the highest leverage thing. So each week I go, what's the thing that's going to be the highest leverage for most people in
Mm-hmm.
regard to tools and environments? Like, we should probably do something about this phone. Like, this is the thing that we're interacting with in space the most. So, okay, so what can we do with this phone? What's the highest leverage thing that's going to give us the most amount of
Mm-hmm.
freedom? And so it's like looking at what's the highest leverage piece. So if I look at psycho emotional health, what's the highest leverage concepts and exercises we can do that's going to get them the greatest benefit. So it's like finding the leverage in each one, but also, yeah, by looking at a greater amount of space, you may, like, the idea is that, like, you stumble across it. Like, you rarely look across the horizon and go, oh my God, that's like the most high leverage thing I could do. It's usually stumbled across, and that's one thing I really like about how we do it, is because it's if it's an area you haven't focused on, it's shockingly impactful.
I can imagine. And I bet that most people go through life trying to hide their weaknesses rather than to actively pursue them.
Oh yeah, I know I do.
Yeah, this probably, I don't know if it's natural, but it's at least normal. Um, my exercise sessions are a really good example because I just try to figure out where I can't go,
Yeah,
and then I find a way to get to go there. And it's this back and forth with my nervous system governing what I'm able and not able. And if I'm not able, I add a little more safety to it and work my way back into that previous no-go zone. And I do the same thing with the people I coach. And sometimes it looks really boring, but finding the blend between actively looking for those weaknesses and then just playing, that's really clutch, I think.
yeah,
Yeah, because if you're having fun, like I used to think, life is a game that you can win or lose, and now I think if you're playing, then you're winning pretty much. I used to think the same way with sports. It was hyper competitive, and if I wasn't winning, then I'm losing. But now it's like, man, if I get to play, that's the treasure. I have this little rhyme. It's when presence is pleasure, you found the treasure. And if I can be in that zone, because it's so easy for us to forget shit, but if it rhymes, it'll stay with you a little bit better. And it's kind of like that book by Aldous Huxley, who also wrote Brave New World, the book Island, where the birds say, attention, here and now, attention, here and now. And they're like, why do they say that? And they said, well, that's what everybody forgets, right? They forget to be present here and now. And if if you think, uh, it's something that you can win, you're going to feel the losses a little more significantly, or the illusions of losses a little more significantly, and you might build up this identity that is hell bent on winning, and you might neglect the love of the game. And not everybody, some people do both, but it's it's very interesting to see the way that people approach life. Like we said in the beginning, is it a game? Is it a ride? Is it a show? Is it surfing? What the heck are you doing here?
Yeah. Yeah. I want people reach out to me. Tell me how you viewed life. I want to hear. I want to hear about
Yeah,
that.
we should do a poll. Do you see life as a game, a ride, or a show?
Yeah. Hmm. Well, I want
A
to.
show. eh,
We
Yeah,
give
go
those
for it.
examples, and maybe they see it as something different.
Yeah, yeah, or other, right? Hmm. So when, like, let's say with the phone thing, and this might even take us back to the very beginning with your fast and your desire to watch or listen to that Jordan Peterson podcast. A lot of things people know that they should do them, but then they just don't. Like, I bet most people know that they spend too much time on the magic telephone. But what is it that makes them actually do something about that? Because I've worked with people and I'm like, you got to look at your screen time every day just so you at least know where it's going. And they won't. They
I
won't.
know
It's
how to. I
embarrassing.
know how to get results.
It's uncomfortable. Tell me.
Have them pay you a bunch of money, an uncomfortable amount of money, to improve their life, and then you tell them to stop doing something, and then they'll feel like they're not getting their money's worth unless they follow your direction. Coach business coaching 101.
Mic drop. You got to pay till it hurts if you want to change, people. That's it.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's something to that.
it gets your, was it, what's the saying? Like, if you pay, you pay
If you
attention or
pay,
something
you
like.
pay attention. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. If you pay, you pay attention. It's
Yeah.
true.
Dude, I'm surrounded by tons of wisdom all the time. I have some of the smartest friends. If I just listened to what they said and took their advice, I'd be in a so much better position. But I have to go spend thousands of dollars on coaching to take the action. Actually, I don't have to. I'm pretty good about taking action without it. But some of the biggest results I've got is because I went and got a coach. And I look back and I go, there definitely was some moments where the coach was exceptional and got me results, but the majority of what really got me to get good results is when it's the person I was paying the most. Like the coach that I spent the most money on is what got me the best results. Yeah, he was great, but I definitely wasn't going to come back like a week later having not done anything. I'm like, this is like $1,000 a week. I'm going to spend $1,000 a
Right.
week, not do the thing that I said I was going to do last week. Fuck no. I go see a therapist. I stopped seeing a therapist. It's like $175 an hour every other week. Didn't really
Hmm.
matter much to me.
Well, it didn't hurt
Didn't
enough.
hurt enough. Yeah, yeah. I
I've had that happen.
that's part of the pricing conversation with coaches too. I talk to coaches about how to price themselves, and like there's this desire to keep their services accessible, but it it may actually hurt your ability to get your clients results if unless they're like in a really, unless they're dirt poor.
Mm, yeah, sometimes I've seen it in my own business. You charge someone 300 for an hour. You see them again the next week, and you say, "Hey, did you do the stuff that I suggested you do?" And they go, "No," and I go, "Okay, let's let's work on it here together." And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
it is so interesting. But
yeah.
with the telephone thing, I I can't imagine that too many people are not aware that their life and their limbic system have been hijacked by constant messages, the news, the dopamine machine, just absolute chaos,
But
basically.
I read an article about a guy who moved to the United States. I think he's a tech entrepreneur who carries around a dumb phone,
Hmm.
and uh, I actually like grayscale my phone and at night kill all the blue light that emits from it. it actually
Mm-hmm.
makes it to where like screwing around on Instagram is not really that enjoyable when in
Mm.
grayscale, all those colors aren't popping out at you. And
It reminds me of those apps or those games where the game itself is really dumb. You just like tap on coins or something like
oh
that. And then
yeah,
there's like a celebration every time you touch something. And it's like, ooh, you're the mayor of Simtown or something now. And do you want to buy some more coins or do you want to wait 5 minutes? And you're like, fuck, I don't want to wait 5 minutes. And South Park did a whole episode called Freemium Isn't Free, which if you like South Park, is one of the best episodes.
I
It's
love.
so
You know what? I have not
so
watched the
good.
last few seasons. I felt like they dropped the ball during the whole COVID scamdemic, and it just yeah, they didn't really go as far. It's like they demonstrated they recognized the scam, but they didn't push hard enough to get canceled. And it was like
Mm,
the first time I saw South Park pull back,
mm,
and I kind of it didn't have the same like teeth. Because
mm.
the thing that's beautiful about South Park is it's such a fucking outrageous and accurate commentary on society,
And it's
and
equal. Everybody's fair game.
everyone's fair game. You know, everything's ridiculous. You're fucked. It's not. They don't take sides. You know, they
Right.
might be attacking Hillary Clinton one week and Trump the next week. Like it doesn't matter. They don't have a side. But I
Right.
feel like something happened during that time that kind of fucked them up.
Mm,
But what's it go? Oh, the tech entrepreneur is from like Nigeria or something. He comes from a country where there was like basically no technology, and he moves here when he's 15 or 16, and he got to witness over like a decade uh, how his happiness level just plummeted. You know, he
mm,
he moved to America for more opportunity and to be in the land of the free and home of the brave and freedom to be happy and all this shit. And so he wrote this whole article about just be on a dumb phone, all tips and tricks to check off of technology. And yeah, it's I think it's sneaky. I bring him up because like I definitely existed during a time where there was actual buttons on a phone that was plugged into the wall. Like I remember when like wireless phones inside the house came around. And then I remember when like, the Zach Morris Saved by the Bell, brick phone came out. And then I got my first flip phone
mm,
and yada yada yada. And it like slowly crept into my life to where just like uh and I'm a gadgety guy. And so like yeah, until I was about 35, I always got like the newest new iPhones coming out.
mm,
Definitely getting that. Like the first smartphone that came to the market, I made sure to get it. And like,
mm,
man, that was probably like 2008, 2009. And yeah, it's a slippery slope because what the phones were capable of 15 years ago compared to now, totally different, but it just snuck in. And people who are born now, that's all they know. All they know is the digital. But it's cool
I-
to hear people's perspectives who came here more recent, basically came from the third world to here. They go from not being able to make a long distance phone call to unlimited online streaming from in your pocket.
well, and it's so useful too, right? Even if I go out, like I don't bring my phone with me, but I turn it off and I throw it in the car because it's a supercomputer. It's incredibly useful. It's got GPS and maps, and I can see which restaurant I could go to based on the reviews. You can't deny the utility, but as far as the addiction is concerned, it's a pacifier for a lack of tits, basically, to use like a baby analogy. It doesn't really satisfy, it just pacifies your desire for connection to other people, because that is a strong natural desire that human beings have. We want to be connected with other people, but it just pacifies. So you'll be um, doing something, but it doesn't really satisfy that actual desire that you have. So I say it's like a pacifier in that regard. And that's almost more sinister than totally lacking it. It's just like the way that pornography is a pacifier, where you'll be less likely to go talk to some real ladies because it just it just pacifies that desire. And I'm sure a lot of people have real problems with that. I know that for me, going cold turkey on everything was the way, and that's usually how I operate. Like when I decided no more email, not teaching seminars anymore, no more advertising, no more phone, no more anything, and it was really hard stop. But just the way that you're doing a media fast, man, that's probably the best thing for people to do. But how do you get them to take that leap and relinquish this magical dopamine machine that is making them feel good when they're, maybe not feeling good? Just like any other addiction. It's not like with food addiction, right? It's not it's not what you're eating, it's what's eating you. Like, why are you so sad and trying to pleasure yourself with food? Because you don't see another option that satisfies.
Yeah. Right on. Let's wrap it up.
Anyway,
Do you have a summary?
remember to love each other and focus on what is important and keep it playful. That's it.
And to quote
And
Max Shank, if presence is pleasure, you found the treasure.
my man,
All right, where can people find you?
maxshank.com, at maxshank, wandering around Encinitas, California as well.
I just visualize people with binoculars out on a hill looking for you.
They're like looking around.
All right.
Love it.
And you can find me on Instagram at Mike_Bledsoe. Get notified of any new cool shit that's happening by getting on the newsletter. Click that button in the bio, and I will see y'all next week. Love you.
Love you. Bye.